my go-to funny face. I'll do that. You said any pose, lady. What the heck? And welcome, everyone. It's your boy Zero.
And I'm Mesh.
And we're grabbing a cup of coffee because it's going to be a doozy. We're on episode 20, the big 2-0, actually, of our playthrough of Digimon Hacker's Memory.
I feel like all of these episodes are going to be a doozy. I go into each one of these episodes thinking, man, when are we going to finish this game?
We keep getting sidetracked. We have other videos that we keep uploading. We have another big project that we've been working on in the background that'll go up when it's ready. It's summertime, you know, it's June, you know. The summer fighting games, we may not be able to do it in July, but you know, August is still summer, so we can probably try then, right, Mash?
Why don't we do the summer fighting games in the winter? Let's be non-conformists and just like mess with the seasons this time around.
How about no?
It'll be the winter summer fighting games.
The winter summer fighting games. That makes no sense.
It makes perfect sense, depending on who you ask. Yeah, we'll kind of have to see.
I was gonna say if we were in the southern hemisphere, we could pull that off.
I feel like eventually we'll run out of fighting games, though.
No, we won't.
At some point.
Because we can 100% just, you know, do different versions. Like, of course, there's Street Fighter Alpha games, 1, 2, and 3, and then there's Street Fighter 2 and all its different versions. Street Fighter 3 and its different versions. That would be a doozy, actually.
Oh, you're right.
Street Fighter 4 and its different versions, and then, of course, we haven't done a KOF game at all.
I don't... I mean, there's still a few fighting games we haven't done, but I don't want us to do every Street Fighter game, especially not different versions of like 2 and stuff. Because now it may be interesting. That could be a great
retrospective
project for some. Yeah, for like some YouTube channel that definitely has like the time and resources to do it all, to just play every Street Fighter 2 version. But I think for like us, the time that we have on our hands, probably not a good use of it. Probably better off just, I don't know, playing a different fighting game and just recognizing that 2 has way too many fucking versions.
Yeah, you're not necessarily wrong. I'm mostly just spitballing here.
Makes sense, yeah.
I'm spitballing while I go through these hacker memories, which is, you know, how this game got the title. I just don't know what they're really for. Because sure, you learn a little bit about like some background crap that's happening, but I don't see this actually giving me too much as like an extra bonus for like playing the game. I don't get it.
Was there hacking in the Digimon movie?
I mean, no.
No?
Not really.
What about the scene when Tai and the smart kid are like in his room? Yeah, and then he's got to like do stuff with his computer.
Well, I've watched that movie a billion times because I have he's talking about the Digimon movie that aired in the States, by the way, everyone, which is a whole different beast than the 3 original movies that aired in Japan, for those uninitiated. And in the English version, and I'm pretty sure in the Japanese version too, I have to double check that, Izzy hacks into the Japanese military satellite system to connect back to the internet to help stop an evil virus Digimon from destroying the internet and stopping it from detonating 2 nukes, one in the US and one in Japan. Because of course, an epic movie from the late 90s or the 2000s has to have something crazy like that. But yeah, it was obviously the best part of that movie. Tell me I'm wrong, Mash.
You know, that probably was my favorite part. So
it's everyone's favorite part. Are you kidding me?
Right. For those that don't know, I'm pretty sure I watched some of the Digimon movie back when I was a kid because my friend had it, but I don't remember watching the whole thing. And then I thought maybe I just don't remember it because it was like so long ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I watched it as a kid. I'm not gonna remember every detail about the movie. So then I sat down. I sat down with my girlfriend to watch the movie, and it was 3 parts. I very vaguely remember part one. I definitely remembered part two, and I did not remember part three at all. Like part three was the most foreign out of all of it. I was like, I don't remember any of these characters. I don't remember it looking this good, like visually. I don't remember the storylines, the antagonist in it, which would have obviously been recognizable. So yeah, I sat down recently and watched that movie, and it was an interesting experience. I feel like I've prepared myself better for this playthrough now. Like I'm better prepared. I come to the table with more for each of these episodes, having watched the movie.
I mean, the thing is, by having watched the movie, you will also start recognizing some of the evil Digimon, or just Digimon in general, when they start appearing. But to like help you understand, and maybe the viewers, I did explain this to you off recording, but I'll explain it here anyway. So the third part of the American version of the Digimon movie was obviously its own movie in Japan called Digimon 02 Hurricane Touchdown, the Golden Digimentals, something 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 something.
What?
Yeah, it's a long ass title. Because the first two were just called Digimon Adventure. That was the first part of the movie. Second part of the movie was literally called Digimon Adventure Our War Game. Simple titles. And then the third one had to have the most complicated fucking crazy ass title out of all of them. You there, Mash?
Oh, I'm here. I'm just looking this up. I have to see that for myself.
Look up the title and tell me the entire title, because it's fucking stupid.
I will, but what's the like? How do I find it?
Type in Digimon Movie, Digimon 02 Hurricane Touchdown. Just type that in and you should find everything. It started with some Olympic athletes back in the day. What the fuck is she talking about? Symbolize war, can even be used as an insult depending on who uses it where. So the peace sign or the V sign, which are two fingers, can be used as an insult? The hell are you talking about? Just assume any pose you feel comfortable with. Fist pump with a smile. My go-to funny face. I'll do that. You said any pose, lady. What the heck?
Well, I didn't find a title quite as long as the one that you said, but it says Hurricane Touchdown, the Golden Digimentals Digimon Grand Prix. That's what I see over here. But then there's another one that came out in 2006. It looks like that one has a longer title, which is The Digital World in Imminent Danger, Ultimate Power Activate Burst Mode, with several exclamation marks.
So me and my friends, because we do a Digimon watch party every Friday, we actually just finished watching that. That is one of the shortest movies you'll ever see because it was literally like 20-something minutes long.
Well, too bad the title can reflect that.
But no, so like I was saying earlier, and I was explaining to Mash and the viewers, of course, you guys at home, the third part of the American movie was, of course, taken from the Japanese Hurricane Touchdown, the Golden Digimentals, whatever. And the coolest thing about that movie is that it actually most of it takes place in the United States. So part of it takes place in New York, and the other part of it takes place in Colorado. And I found that to be fantastic because in pretty much all of Digimon Season 1, you get glimpses of Digimon in other places in the world, but it's mostly just Japan, and mostly the Tokyo area anyway. So when I saw New York and, Colorado as a kid, I was like, oh shit, it's happening in the US too. That's so cool. It's sort of like seeing your own home in a news report. Maybe not in a news report, but like seeing your neighborhood in a movie or a show. You get sort of excited about it, right? You're like, yo, that's my neighborhood.
It hits closer to home.
It hits way closer to home. So of course, as a kid, I love that part of it. And the animation was fantastic in that movie. I can't complain. All three parts had fantastic animation and good art. Slightly different art, but still good. The problem is that the original Japanese one, it's almost as if the original writers were snorting while trying to come up with a story. Not sure what's going on, but I promised her I'd stay. Okay, now I gotta figure out what I gotta do. So get this, in the original Japanese version, you have this kid called Wallace. In the Japanese version, he has a different name, with twin Digimon, Terriermon and Lopmon, but he kept calling him Kokomon because reasons. And literally in the Japanese version, it's literally just, hey, let's go play in the field. And then Kokomon out of nowhere, like, gets surrounded by wind. And just stops being good. There's no explanation. Literally, he just turns evil, no explanation given, and that's basically how the story continues. Like, he disappears, comes back when Wallace is older. Terriermon's like, oh no, my brother, he's evil, but no explanation, and then they just start fighting in New York. Two previous characters, some of you may know them, TK and Kari, see that happening. Like, they sense it and they like find him and they're like, yo, what's going on? Let us help you. Wallace is like, no, I gotta leave, and starts making his way back to Colorado, his home state, because Kokomon kept saying, go back. That's pretty much the plot. Like, you know, the rest of the cast kind of just joins in because TK and Kari told them, hey, come to Colorado somehow, some way. So they kept bumming plane rides and truck rides and taxi drives and shit with random people, which, by the way, is not the best way to do shit. And they kind of forced themselves onto helping Wallace, and in the Japanese version, Wallace is kind of an asshole. Like, he kept telling, like, Terriermon to shut up and to, like, stop bothering him several times, and I'm like, wow, I do not like this version of him.
Yeah.
And, like, everything starts coming to a head because Kokomon keeps attacking, but he just keeps saying, go back, and, like, kept saying Wallace and shit. Meanwhile, while all this is happening and they're trying to get to Colorado, the original cast of kids get abducted by Kokomon somehow through his wind, I guess? And they're put in, like, this alternate dark universe where he, like, de-ages them over time. And, like, his small version keeps trying to check on them, be like, Wallace? Wallace, is that you, Wallace? And I'm like, why is he doing that? Like, I tried to make sense out of it, like, oh, they all have the same Digivice as Wallace, but they don't look anything like him, especially the girls. So why bother? Like, I was trying to make sense out of it, and, like, the whole movie's a fever dream if you actually watch it in Japanese with subtitling. There's even a Southeast Asian dub that you can just watch in English. Not the best dubbing acting, by the way, but it's possible. And it's actually also very, very true to the Japanese version. And it's just a fucking fever dream. The worst part about it, the fight scenes, instead of having, you know, like, pump up music or like something that would actually fit it, they decided, yeah, let's do freeform jazz. Just weird ass freeform jazz with a lot of bells. And that's the fight scene. That's the music we're gonna use for fight scenes.
I mean, jazz is pretty good, but I definitely agree. I felt like the version that I watched of Wallace's story was a fever dream, and a lot of elements didn't really make a lot of sense.
It didn't make sense. You're right, but that's because they were the writers of the American version of Digimon were forced to shoehorn in that third part of the movie. It wasn't something they wanted to do because they understood this third part of the movie is rough and it doesn't make sense. So the way they made it make sense for the American version of the movie is they made Wallace a genius They changed his name to Willis. I don't know why. They off screen sort of put him in like the second part of the movie, our war game with, you know, the internet and the battle with Omnimon and shit, by saying, oh, Izzy and Willis have been in contact this whole time, and Willis is giving Izzy information as to how to beat him. Meanwhile, in the original Japanese, it was just some rando from the US giving Izzy information, not Willis. And that's how they basically tried to tie it all together in the American version. So when Diaboromon, the evil guy in the second part, was killed, the way they explained it in the English version was, hey, the virus left the internet somehow and then infected one of his twin Digimon, and that's why it went evil. That makes more sense than the Japanese version, because they didn't explain shit.
Makes about as sense as that dialogue choice.
Yeah, you're telling me. I'm trying to follow it while explaining. And I did it. The next line was, I think it was Sangun. Damn it.
Wrong.
I was half paying attention. So, yeah.
You're paying more attention than me, because when I saw that first choice of the three of them, I thought it was this exact same line each time. I couldn't even like comprehend that there was variations between each line.
Damn, there was a
fourth one? My brain is starting to really slip out of my head. I want to rant about working.
You'll get to.
That's what I want to do.
Let me finish my whole explanation thingy. So,
yeah, go for it.
Because they were forced to shoehorn it in, like I said, they basically tried to like tie it all together. And in my opinion, you know, they created a better version of the third part of the movie, you know, of Hurricane Touchdown, than the original Japanese ever had. The only thing I hated was the fact that they were also forced to shoehorn in a very short animation of Angela Anaconda to the very first part of the movie. Officially, that's part of the movie for some stupid reason. And it ended up cutting out a lot of time that could have been used to further improve the third part of the movie with extra, scenes where, there were fights and shit. And to maybe add a little bit more background story to Willis and shit.
I don't think they could have improved that third part of the movie.
Dude,
it doesn't feel like it to
I'm
me.
gonna bring you and your girlfriend that Southeast Asia dub, so we don't have to deal with subtitles, so you can see what I mean. But no, as a guy, as an animator, as an artist myself, as a guy who wants to tell a good story, I find it frustrating when I watch some Japanese media, and some of them are ridiculously good storytellers, and others are like, yeah, so here's my story and figure the rest out yourself. Like, motherfucker, what? Only, like, if you're gonna be doing that, you gotta be, like, weaving up a really good story. You can't just, like, give me half the information and leave the rest of it to me to, like, figure it out. You can't do that.
Yeah, they should have never segmented the story into 3 parts, like, that are... At face value, it seems like they have nothing to do with each other. That's kind of how I interpret it from a first time, like, viewing it, aside from being, like, a kid. It seemed to me like these are 3 stories that have absolutely nothing to do with each other, or almost nothing to do with each other, besides some similar characters, some similar Digimon. They shouldn't have structured it like that. I mean, and I hate to always bring up the comparison, because I'm not trying to make it to be some kind of like Digimon versus Pokemon thing, but I can't help but think about Pokemon, and if they made the Pokemon movie, the very first one that all us little kids went crazy for back when we were kids.
Yeah.
Went to the movie theater, got that golden card and stuff. Like, if they took the movie and instead of it just being one long sequence of events that's pretty much, like chronologically just makes sense. It's like it's a timeline that you're witnessing happen. And then they said that they forget it. We're going to make 3 small movies and put them together and call it one movie. I think that would have been a horrible idea. So
I completely agree.
When I say that they couldn't make the third part make sense, is just there's too much missing between each of those sections that I don't care what they would have done with part 3 by itself. It just did not fit very well into the rest of it. Again, it was still Digimon. There was still reference to some of the characters from the previous parts. But all in all, getting to part 3 after watching part 2, not only was it a jump in animation quality, which is also jarring, but just the story didn't really flow naturally. And I just thought to myself, I'm not watching a movie. I'm like watching 3 episodes of something. That's how I felt.
I 100% agree with you. The thing is, like, you and I are on the same page when it comes to this. And Pokemon had the benefit of actually having like a full-length movie be developed for kids in Japan. In Japan, usually kids' movies or like short films or like films in general, they last 30, 40 minutes. And now, you know, it changes over time, obviously. So movies, of course, go from like an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours now in Japan, too. But, you know, back in the day, it was different. So where Digimon stayed more like normal when it came to, at least Japanese normal, when it came to their movies, Pokemon said, no, this thing is already international. It's already international. It's hitting the US like a freaking atom bomb. And let's not lie, because it did. And we kind of need to give people this movie. Now, the first movie did technically have 2 parts that didn't have anything to do with each other, because there was that whole Pikachu vacation thing.
Yeah.
But that felt just like a little bit of an extra treat before we got to the main course.
That was like the Angela Anaconda opening compared to splitting a movie up into 3 parts.
No, absolutely. Now, here's the funny thing about the Angela Anaconda thing. There's actually some copy pasta online where a kid describes going to the movies with his mom and dad and getting there, and it starts and it's just Angela Anaconda, and so he starts getting upset and starts to, like, you know, cry and whatnot, which, you know, gets them to leave the theater, only to then have the parents fight and then have the parents divorce because of the fight. So the guy made this post saying Angela Anaconda made my parents split up, which I found funny. I have no idea whether it's true or not. I figured it's something that I should mention here because I do find it a little bit funny that somehow parents got upset at a freaking movie that their kid was watching to the point where they divorced. Like, that's wild.
Yeah, I don't know about any of that, but that 3rd part was like fucking.
It really was bad.
I didn't like it. I mean, again, the only thing I really liked about it was that it had good animation, but it was just so. Oh, and then isn't there like some weird segment at the very end of it with music that's like a total tonal shift and also very jarring? I remember watching it and then it was like the movie kind of just turned into a music video at the end, which is not out of the realm of, you know, kids movies do stuff like that, like suddenly just breaks out into song, but that certainly wasn't what I expected from a movie like Digimon. And when part 3 was probably a bit more serious than the first 2 parts overall, it seemed a lot less funny than like part 1 or part 2 at times, and took itself seriously a bit. So to kind of suddenly do that to you was like, yeah.
No, dude, the worst part about it is, I know what you mean. It did sort of get into like this weird movie thing, because here's the thing. Several parts again, we're talking about the 3rd part of the movie again, because again, that was the worst part and people can't shut up about it, and I get why. In the original, Kokomon just kept saying, go back, go back, go back, go back, go back, and, you know, freaking swaying his head back and forth and just saying it over and over again. And several of those shots of him doing that were cut from the English, because why the fuck would you want that? Like, you already know he wants you to go back. Like, cut it out. You don't need to repeat it over and over. So, for some reason, they decided to have a little fun with that, with those shots. So they used a shot of Willis on the floor looking at Kokomon going, why is he doing that? And they had freaking All-Star playing while Kokomon is swaying back and forth, and they're having the voice actor like hum and say random shit while All Star is playing.
Wait, which All-Star song?
All Star is the song. You're thinking of the band
Oh,
Smash Mouth.
shit. Sorry.
Hey now, you're an All Star. Get your game. Yeah, that song.
So that movie featured All-Star by Smash Mouth,
Yes.
and that was when it played it. That was the moment when they played it, and that's why it's on the soundtrack for that movie.
Yes.
That's awful. That's I'm sorry, that's
know.
terrible.
That is. It's such a good song, mind you, and it was still fresh when that movie came out. To then use it only at the very end as a gag was kind of insulting, if I'm being 100% honest.
I remember that now. Yeah, I remember that being pretty bad. My God. Well, again, the animation was very nice, but the story I felt like was very confusing and such needless plot for the most part. At one point, they like ordered a pizza so that they can hop in the back of the car and like go somewhere or whatever, you know. And I'm just like, we're watching one group of kids hitchhike while another group of kids actually kind of like are focused around the plot. It's like the actual plot of this part of the movie. And
So-
the worst part of it is it
Go
doesn't
ahead.
fit up with the rest of it.
Dude, it's so bad. Because here's the thing: throughout the original Japanese version, by the way, before I start confusing you, do you want me to like refer to, Willis as like his English name or like his Japanese name? So we just stick to one name.
I could care less. I mean, they're so close. Like Willis Wallace, or it's almost the same thing. It seems needless
Yeah.
to want to change it.
So, all right, so I'll stick with Willis. So in the original Japanese, Willis was consistently calling his mom to like keep her updated and shit. And you know what? That was one of the most realist parts of that movie. That's the only thing I actually appreciated about that movie. Because let's be honest, in Digimon, these kids are gone for like weeks at a fucking time. You know? And their parents are just like, oh yeah, they're back. Like, okay, at least he's updating her, you know? So that time when he was quote unquote ordering the pizza, he was actually calling his mother. And it was just Davis and him there. Because in the original Japanese, when they leave in that truck, that's not a pizza delivery truck. That's just some rando they were able to like tell, hey,
Hitchhike.
yeah, literally hitchhiking. Like some kids on the road in the middle of Colorado was able to get some old blonde fat dude in a truck to pick them up. Like that's the original Japanese. Like sure, again, that's badass, especially if you're a kid, and you're thinking, "Oh wow, they're pulling it off somehow. Look at that." But, when you're an adult or like if you're an animator doing that, you got to be questioning yourself like, is this something we want kids to be thinking about, like randomly hitchhiking with randos? I don't know. So that's what happened. They had to splice it in different ways to make it seem like they were accidentally left behind by the pizza guy when it wasn't a pizza guy at all. I'm telling you, these guys did their best. Again, they were forced to put all three movies together. They fought hard against it. But at the end of the day, they don't cut the paycheck, so the higher up said do it.
This sounds like some Sega of Japan versus Sega of America nonsense, but dude, I honestly wish the best for this movie. And I wish that instead of being these three parts, part one could have been shorter, just as like a little kind of intro to what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they could have just been like, oh, a few years later, here's what happened. And take all of the resources that went into making part 3 and just flesh out part 2. That's how that movie should have been, in my opinion.
I 100% agree. But again, these movies were not made in tandem when in Japan. The very
clearly.
first part of the movie, Digimon Adventure, by the way, was created as an intro to the literal first season. So, like, I think it was a day before the actual season 1 aired in Japan. that short movie with Ty and Kari as like little babies was shown at a film festival. So like people who were like, you know, getting into Digimon 100% got to see that part of the movie first and then went through watching season 1. After season 1 concluded, they were given our war game, which again, 30 to 40 minute movie, which was epic and super well written for a kid's movie because that shit was epic. And then as season 2 was starting to air, they were like, oh, we gotta, you know, keep up the momentum and make another movie. I don't know why they couldn't get the writer of the first 2 movies to write it, but, you know, they got some wacko to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, things played out that way, and there's no real way to like go back and fix it. Like the only thing that could be done is obviously get all the voice actors back, get a group of artists and shit to recreate what was made. You know, like I don't know how else to say it. But this movie does have its fans somehow. I don't know why, but it does. And some people are like, no, this movie's actually good. And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Their own. Everyone has a right to like certain things and dislike certain things, so that's fine.
No, they're wrong, I tell you.
Well, that's how it looks to us, because we certainly don't like this movie. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. And it only gets worse for me just kind of thinking about the moment when it transitions from part 2 to part 3, or movie 2 to movie 3, or B to C, whatever. And suddenly it goes from like this very early 2000s kind of animation style, like maybe like 2004 animation style, maybe a little earlier than that. And then it suddenly gets to like way more modern. Like it's such a step up. It's one of those moments where you almost want to adjust your TV or your computer, whatever you're watching it on, because you think for a second that something messed up, and you're like, wait, this isn't the same movie. Like that was such a jarring transition from the second part to the third part. It almost made me think twice as to if it was actually the same movie.
So the thing is, when I watched it several times as a kid as well, all of that I ignored because I was just so in love with Digimon. And again, when you try to watch other kids shows, especially like Pokemon, that don't really have a big overarching story, it's episodic. And you watch something like Digimon where like, you know, these creatures and the humans, they get like a very close attachment to each other and shit. Like I was engrossed. You get me a good story and like I'm stuck with it. Like I'm in there. So I loved Digimon so much back in the day that anything I had against that third part, I kind of just ignored because, you know, the first 2 parts were just so good anyway. Plus, again, very good animation style. And when those golden Digi-Eggs appeared, let's not lie, that I thought that was pretty freaking badass. Like that whole thing was pretty cool. But that's pretty much the only cool thing about the movie, other than the fact that it was in the US.
Yeah, I like the conclusion of part 2. Part 2's like penultimate fight. Its climactic fight was awesome. I thought that in general, again, part 2 was really good. If you just stripped away the first and the third parts, I would have been
fleshed it out more. 100%, I agree.
Yeah, but even just kind of watching it by itself, like, so you're saying that since these are 3 different movies, is there just a version where I could watch where it's just part 2?
Absolutely. Again, the Japanese version has extra scenes, but what we got was pretty much the movie. But if you want me to tell you, I can tell you like the scenes that were cut out. I could expand on that, but we should probably do that next time because we are out of time actually.
Oh, don't.
Yeah.
No.
Nanners, sorry, Mash over here is gonna get the information like pretty much right away, but you guys will have to wait until next week because we are out of time, but we want to thank you guys for watching.
That's right. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed it. I'm curious to see what everyone else thinks about part 3. If anyone out there has anything remotely nice to say about Part 3, let us know in the comments.
Indeed. Did you guys watch the Digimon movie in theaters back in the day? Did you watch Digimon at all? Do you have any opinions about Digimon? Do you like the stories? Let us know. Come on, guys. Talk to us down in the comments. We're itching for a conversation.
That's right. And we'll see you on the next episode, which should be 21.
That's right. Take care until then.
Bye.